Okay, I think we can get underway now. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning Applications Committee. I'm Councillor James Husband, Chairman of the committee, and to my right, I'm joined by my fellow councillors, and it will be us who are making the decisions on the cases in front of us this afternoon and then this evening. There's a very long agenda for this evening, for this meeting. So what's going to happen is that when we've completed a few formalities, for the first half of the meeting, I'm going to pass the chair to Councillor Mackover, who will then chair through until we take an interval. We'll take a break, and then we will come back at 6:30, when we will, in effect, have a second half. Can I ask, Tommy, are there any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chairman. There are no apologies for absence.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Are there any other declarations? No. Actually, I should declare that in relation to the application in Earl's Walk, it's in my ward, it's quite close to where I live, and I actually know, I think, all of the parties involved on all sides. So I'm going to step aside when we get to consider the Earl's Walk application in front of us. Okay. Now, minutes of meetings. We've got a couple of sets of meetings that I think need to be agreed. The first is minutes of the meeting that were held on the 17th of February. Can I sign those as a true record? Thank you. Thank you. And also minutes of a meeting held on the 16th of April. Can I sign those as a record? Great, thank you. Good. Very good. Well, in that case, I'm going to pass the chair across to my colleague, Councillor Mackover, who is going to chair the first part of the meeting. So we can do a bit of musical chairs.
Good afternoon. I may just indicate the running order so that people know when their cases are coming up. There are a couple of people who are still en route, and so we've slightly adjusted the running order. The first case will be 15 Gloucester Road, and then which is a speaker case, and then we have three other speaker cases, which are 29 Earl's Walk, Alan Moorkhill House, and 186 Brompton Road. We will then run through a number of non-speaker cases. I'll just quickly highlight what they are in case anyone is watching and waiting online or in the room, so they know when it might come up. 71 Gloucester/85 Cromwell Road, Eldon House, 35352 Kings Road, Park International Hotel, 20 Tadima Road, Knights House, Goulburn Road, Central Library, Ladbroke Grove, Tavistock Crescent, Sheffield Terrace, Oakworth Road, 55 Linden Gardens, and Davis Court, Argyle Road. So the first case, I'm looking to officers because they will present, and then we'll talk to our speakers, is 15 Gloucester Road, please.
Thank you. Before I begin my presentation, I would draw members' attention to the addendum report with the additional representations received. This application relates to 15 Gloucester Road and seeks temporary advertisement consent for the addition of an advertisement within a shroud. The application has been applied for on a 6-month period. The site relates to a Grade 2 listed building within the Queensgate Conservation Area. The site location plan can be seen on this slide, and I would draw members' attention to the location of the shroud and the advertising with my cursor just here. A photo of the front of the building and a photo of the shroud with the advertisement can be seen on this slide. The previous shroud was granted by the local planning authority in August 2025, and this expired in February 2026. The project programme provided within the application can be seen on this slide. Members should note that the application was submitted to the local planning authority in December 2025. However, due to the cyber issues, it was formally registered and informed consultation in March 2026. The works completed so far include the cleaning of the facade, and the proposed works include the window repairs. The proposed elevations of the shroud can be seen on this slide. The advert equates to 19% of the full covering. The officer recommendation is to grant advertisement consent subject to the temporary condition for 6 months. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could we hear, please, first from the objector, Adrian de Secundo? And if you just switch your microphone on there. Yeah, if you just push the little button. Yes, exactly. And it's fine to sit down as well. It's up to you.
Is that better?
Yeah, you're welcome to sit down as well. It's fine. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The fact that there have been 7 people who have taken the trouble to object to this application says almost as much as I can. But essentially, what it all boils down to is that this is a residential area to which there has been much interruption by the scaffolding hoarding, and as already noted, there have been 4 permits for scaffolding given by Matthew Evans over the past 2 years, and all we've ever heard is sort of vague and illusory promises that more is needed to pay for the restoration of the front. The scaffolding itself is ugly and blocks views and pavements. Panels, would you believe, 8 metres high, are as tall as anything you'll find in Piccadilly Circus, and 5.47 metres wide. There is thus a loss of visual immunity, and there is also an issue of road safety, because drivers coming along what essentially is a residential street and suddenly seeing these enormous advertising panels are quite likely to get distracted. And the fact of the matter is that this isn't Piccadilly Circus. The other issue is that granting this application would actually set a precedent for other people who might want to do the same sort of thing. And I don't really consider that that is the sort of approach that we would want to have in our beautiful borough. And also, not everybody particularly wants to see enormous pictures of Ralph Lauren, Gucci and Lacoste, etc., every time they look out of their window. So I think that it is a terrible shame and does not support our beautiful city. And I think that the application should not be granted, and a measure taken to ensure that the works needed are completed without delay. I believe this is the first time that this subject has come up to the attention of the full planning committee, and I hope that when having read the documents, they will share the view that I've just expressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And could we also now hear from the applicant or the applicant's agent? I've got Mr. Kelly and Mr. Duncan McKellar. You're there. Thank you. And also, you've got 3 minutes as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm Ben Kelly. I'm here I'm the agent representing the applicant, Urban Vision, who are specialists in scaffold screening solutions incorporating advertising. So the proposal seeks to extend the period of advertising consent linked to building works at the sites that are already subject to listed building consents themselves. There are a few key points I wanted to provide some clarity on before handing over to Duncan McKellar, who will provide a chronology of the works and an update on the project plan at the moment. Firstly, I wanted to make it clear that this decision relates to the advertisement and scaffold screening only. It does not provide approval or otherwise for the scaffolding. As such, if the application is refused, the scaffolding will still remain in place until the works are completed. And a more standard scaffold sheeting will need to be used to cover it, which will not contain the dust and debris and the visual impact of the works to the same degree as the current high quality solution. Sorry, just stopping a little bit. Secondly, the advertising does not impact construction timescales. These are largely dependent on external factors such as the list of building consents, procurement and delivery times, and availability of expertise, given a scarcity of specialist stonemasons, for example. Lastly, it's important to note that the site has supported advertising for a total of just 4 weeks so far this year and just 28 weeks last year. This is far less than the total period already consented by the council of 52 weeks. The reason for this is that Urban Vision work exclusively with premium brands, which means the site does not oversell. And all of the times it just reverts either back to a one-to-one image of the building, or alternatively, like at the moment, it's signage informing the public that the facade is not just for covering construction, but also helping to fund the building works, which it is doing. In summary, the proposal is economic development that is immediately being invested back into the borough's heritage assets. It's not causing any road safety issues. It helps to screen the works and effectively contains dust from construction. With that to consider, I'd like to hand you over briefly to Duncan to update you on the actual works themselves for information.
And thank you. You've got 50 seconds of the 3 minutes remaining.
Thank you. I'm an RIBA registered conservation architect. I've been dealing with this application. Following the enforcement notice to repair the building, we've submitted pre-applications. We were advised to submit a separate application for the scaffolding, which we did. When that was approved, it allowed a detailed inspection of the building, which has suffered from carbon deposits, a couple of bombs close by in World War II. The building has since been detailed survey carried out by Adam Stone and Zerelmi, who are both recognised masons. And we then submitted a listed building application, which was approved. We have now submitted conditions in discussions with the conservation officer.
Unfortunately, that is the 3 minutes you're allowed, but I'm sure there'll be questions where we'll get the chance to examine. In fact, I might, if I may just start with one which might continue on with what you were saying. The officers put up a chart showing that I think the permission was first given in December 2024 for advertising, which then expired in July 25, and then in August 2025, a new permission granted until Feb 26. So it looks like there's been a year and a half for work so far. But from what I saw on the officers' list up there, only cleaning had taken place. Is that correct?
There's been more than cleaning done. The survey work requires a detailed inspection of the stonework and the brickwork, and discussions with the conservation officers how that is going to be repaired. The windows are in manufacture at the moment, and some of the metalwork has already been repaired and ready to go back on the building. We've been closely working with the conservation officer. It has been difficult over the last few months for obvious reasons, but the works are ready to start in earnest with the pointing of the brickwork, and the repair of the stonework. Some of the stonework has already been repaired. It's waiting to come
Thank
back.
you.
To
And
site.
just one little follow-up from me on this. You're applying for 6 months. Does your schedule of work complete the works in 6 months, or are we all going to be here potentially again in 6 months' time for an extension? We just want to see exactly what, as an applicant, you're lining up for us. Thank you.
Yes.
I think we both need to answer this question, to be honest, because it's quite important to point out from the advertiser's point of view, we're only there for as long as the works are going on. We're not, it's not the other way around. So it's easier for me to ask Duncan to explain where the work's going to. We know that it's going to be 6 months, so we want the advertising period to cover that time, but we don't know the full detail. That's for Duncan.
I think in reality,
So check whether my colleagues have got questions to follow up on this. Lloyd.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, I'm not quite clear. Are you saying that this work is expected to take up to 6 months? I didn't get a clear answer from that, or is it going to be 12 months? Because you've heard the concerns from the residents, which sound quite reasonable to me, that this has gone on for quite a long time, and the residents are saying that they're not seeing as much work as we're hearing from you.
So I'd love to answer that directly, but I need to go slightly backwards. So originally it was approved in August 24, but the scaffolding didn't go up at all until March 25. So there's a large period of time there to be accounted for already. What happens then? We then tried to apply for a 6-month extension, knowing that essentially covering the period that we first missed from the scaffolding not starting immediately. When we came to the end of this period, we had to choose. Again, it was mentioned before, the application was submitted back in December, but wasn't registered due to the cyber attack. At that point in time, we didn't have a programme. We just knew that it was still continuing, and we hoped that the programme would follow. So we had to apply for 6 months, but at this stage in time, the programme has been evolving to the point where Duncan can now fit in.
Yes. We can't start the work until we've had the conditions approved. So we are waiting for approval. I checked this morning to see if there was any progress on that. I was just informed that it was a waiting game.
And we'll check with officers about that in a little while. Councillor Idris.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not clear on one thing. When you said you had the scaffolding up to December, but then the cyber attack happened and you had to wait. But did you still have the advertising on, or was the advertising taken down when the cyber attack happened?
It's just remained up pending the decision.
So you just waited for the decision, but
Yeah.
the advertising was still on?
Yes. Well, at the moment, it's not advertising. It's just a notice stating that the scaffold covering is notifying the public the scaffold covering is being used to fund the works. So it's essentially advertising the application.
When was the advertising removed? The advertising from last year, from at the 2025. When was it removed? Was it removed at all?
It hasn't been removed.
So it's still on. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think that's questions for applicants and objector. We'll move to officers. So officers, it's a slightly unusual situation, is because we're hearing that the applicant needs conditions discharged on listed building work to be able to crack on with the work. And so the scaffolding is there, the advertising is attached to the scaffolding. Scaffolding is not going to come down until the works are finished. We have to decide whether to grant 6 months extension. We heard from the applicant that they think 6 months is the amount of work to do, but they don't know when they can start. I don't know whether, do we have any more information about when the listed building works will be given consent or conditions discharged so that they can continue with their work. You might not know that because it's not related to this advertising consent.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have that information in front of me. The applicant team have provided a more detailed timeline. Looking at that, it looks like there's, as the applicant suggested, some brick repairs that's looking to be done and some window replacements. That's all the information that I've got before me in terms of what works are going to be carried out, but there may well be some conditions that need to be approved with us. But unfortunately, I don't have that information in front of me.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Councillor North.
Yes, I'm very aware from the residents about the concerns over this, and I share some of those concerns, and we may look at options here. Are we able to put a reduced time? Because this isn't just a money-spinning exercise for developers here. This is residents have got real concerns over major advertising in their residential area. It's not the High Street or the King's Road here. We're talking about a road that is, and it's taking a lot longer than was thought to. So, is it within our powers this evening, so for example, to offer a 3-month extension?
Yes, so the current recommended condition is condition 6, which limits it to 6 months. That's what the applicants provided for and has suggested how long the scaffolding and the advertisement would be in situ for. Members could look to amend that condition if they felt that 3 months was more appropriate.
Yes, because I'm picking up from the sense in this room is that no one is quite certain how long the real building work will take, and maybe 3 months would focus minds for everybody if the applicant could know that they can continue doing what they have to do now rather than not have any advertising on it, but within the 3 months of detailed programme of works with the conditions discharged so that so the real length of work can be determined, and that the applicant can then come back for an extension based on the actual work that they know has to be carried out. Is that a fair summary? Officers, is that something you've got reasons that we could amend the condition 6?
You can amend condition 6. I think the only thing I would note is that 6 months is a relatively short duration for some of the works they've discussed. So it may be likely that the applicant comes back in. However, we could make a note that if an application was to be resubmitted, members would expect to see some more information as to what is going to be going on site for the remainder of the time.
I think that's exactly right. So if there are no more questions, are we ready to move to a decision on this? So the officer recommendation is to grant. Members have expressed and officers have explained how we can, with an amended condition 6, to allow 3 months only of advertising consent. Those in favour, please show. Okay, that is granted as amended condition 6. Thank you. I'm just seeing whether any of the speakers for 1 and 2 have arrived. It doesn't look like they have. So we'll move on to item 4, which is basement and ground floor 180 to 186 Brompton Road.
Thank you. Again, I would draw members' attention to the addendum report with the additional representations received and the amendments to the conditions. The application site relates to the basement and ground floors of 180 to 186 Brompton Road. The site is located within the Knightsbridge International Centre and is within the secondary frontage. The site is currently vacant but was most formerly in use as a bank. The site was subject to a planning permission in 1963, and condition 2 of this permission restricts the site to only be used for a bank and for no other purpose. The reason for this was the use for general office purpose would be inappropriate to this frontage and would not accord with the zoning within the development plan. It's the aerial view in front of members. This is the site location here with my cursor, taking you to a site photograph of the frontage. The proposed elevations can be seen on this slide. Condition 2, as recommended in the addendum report, would preclude the site being used for certain uses within Class E. This includes gym, nursery and offices. This application proposes no specific use class, although the local planning authority are aware of other applications which indicate a medical use. In any event, officers have assessed which uses in use class E would be supported and would support the function and vitality of the International Centre. To conclude, the officer recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to the recommended conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Now time to hear from the objector on behalf of the Knightsbridge Association, Melvyn Haggard. Thank you, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm Chairman of the Knightsbridge Association. The KA regards the clinic as a socially useful asset. We support a clinic subject to conditions on access and hours. We object to the application covering use classes EA through ED. Their inclusion, in our view, undermines the incentive for the applicant to make a success of the clinic, as he knows a restaurant is the default option. Paragraph 6.21 on page 5 of the officer's report indicates clearly that a restaurant is the likely default option on this site. In our view, use category should be confined to EE. If the clinic were to fail, the applicant should apply for a different category, E use class, to be assessed on its merits at the time. We ask the committee to pay special attention to conditions for access in Chevelle Place. It is a very narrow, congested thoroughfare containing many residential properties. We support practical proposals submitted by James Sharp on behalf of Simon Burkitt. It appears that the Knightsbridge Association's objections of the 9th of April and 30th of April were not uploaded onto the planning portal. This gave a misleading impression of opposition to this proposal. We have copies of these objections, as the committee may not be aware of them. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Now, I've also got names, agent and applicant, of Peter, Edgar and Oliver Mays. You're there, all right? And 3 minutes together, you're both speaking. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you, Chair, for providing us the opportunity to speak. My name's Oliver Mays, and I represent ASI Group. We have owned the building at 180 to 186 Brompton Road for almost 30 years, and I'm joined by Peter Edgar, who is our planning consultant. The bank that previously occupied, which was NatWest, the ground floor and basement, vacated the site over 3 years ago, and it's therefore been vacant and non-active since that time. The bank's exit from this unit reflects the greater usage of internet banking and the diminishing demand for physical banking spaces. The condition attached to a historic permission which restricts the use of this unit to be a bank only is one of the reasons for this extended period of vacancy. Therefore, it is of critical importance that the current Section 73 application is approved to ensure that this does not continue. As long-term owners of the building, we have a vested interest to ensure that any use on the ground and basement floors does not adversely impact either our residential tenants within the building on the upper floors or neighbouring residents. On that basis, our consultant team has worked proactively with your officers to refine the list of sub-uses within Class E that are appropriate for the building and are considered acceptable in principle in accordance with planning policy given the site's location in the Knightsbridge International Centre. We have also written to the Knightsbridge Association and responded to their concerns, all of which we believe we have addressed. In response to the concerns raised and in liaison with your officers, we have committed to ensuring that all operational matters, including servicing and waste collection, are appropriately managed through planning conditions. The key benefits of the proposal include bringing a long vacant and underutilised commercial premises back into active use, supporting investment, employment and economic activity in Knightsbridge and the wider borough, providing valuable Class E flexibility to support long-term occupation and adaptability of the building, reducing the risk of future vacancy by allowing a wide range of uses, and supporting the vitality and sustainability of the wider Knightsbridge commercial area. In response to the comments regarding the clinic, while the prospective tenant is the private diagnostic clinic, this application does not propose to restrict this use. Instead, the range of proposed Class E sub-uses will allow the building to accommodate a variety of compatible commercial healthcare and service uses over time, ensuring its continued relevance and resilience. Whilst not relevant to this proposal, we can confirm that the primary entrance will be maintained from Brompton Road. We hope members support the officer's recommendation and approve the application so that we may keep this excellent site in use for many years to come. We are, of course, happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Right. Let's. I just heard you say there that so the applicant exactly assume is the applicant the clinic or someone else?
No, we, ASI Group, as the freeholder of the building, are the applicant.
Right.
So
the application is to the clinic is almost irrelevant to
Yes.
this application. You're saying you'd like to have use Class E established, and the talk about the clinic is actually, the next day the clinic could disappear and it could be any other use in Class E. That's effectively what you're asking for here, is that right?
Just to clarify, it's not an unrestricted Class E use. So we've agreed with officers to restrict it to certain sub-uses within Class E.
Yeah,
so,
but I mean, we've heard that restaurant is a concern of residents. This could, what I'm thinking as someone who's been on this committee a long time is that I would consider someone coming up and saying, we'd like to have a restaurant on the site as quite a different application, quite a different release from the restricted category, because there would be different sort of criteria such as usage and servicing and other things that we could be misdirecting ourselves if we're thinking about this as a clinic rather than another use. I'm just checking, not asking to debate it now, but really just checking that I'm right in that understanding.
Yeah, so the application as proposed just relates to its use. So if there were to be other physical alterations associated with the restaurant or extraction, that would have to come forward through a separate application.
Thank you. My colleagues. Councillor Idris, please.
Am I understanding you correctly? You would like to have a free for you would like to have a broader application. So you want to have a class where you can just bring anything so you can keep the premises occupied. Am I correct in thinking that?
It's broader, but it's not everything within Class E. So we've excluded certain subclasses that we thought could be impactful or would require additional assessment. So, for example, a creche is excluded, offices are excluded, a gym is excluded because of the potential impacts of those uses. So there are only certain sub-uses of Class E that are included within the application.
But restaurant is a big, as my colleague said, restaurant is a big possibility.
It's one of the range of uses that are included.
But it is the most viable use for a space like that, right?
Well, I'd pass over to my colleague because they are in advanced negotiations with a healthcare operator. So.
Okay, before I finish, have you spoken to the Knightsbridge Association?
The tenant who is incoming has spoken to the Knightsbridge Association, and we've communicated via letter with the Knightsbridge Association.
So you didn't have, and have you communicated with the residents around you? Because behind you it's all residential. It's just in the forefront that is, and above you is all residential too. Have you discussed that with them?
As part of the discussions through the tenant, that discussion has happened, and also the discussion of the landlord with their own residents within the building has also happened.
Because it says here you have notified 0 properties of what you're planning to do.
What reference is that?
Okay, that's us. Okay, so we haven't notified anyone. I'll come to that later. So you haven't engaged with your neighbours, have you?
We've engaged through the tenants to the Knightsbridge Association and also the residents of the building as the landlord of the building. So the building has residential above.
And did they feedback how they feel about the prospect of a free-for-all class?
There was no feedback.
There was no feedback. No. So
apart from obviously the conversations, the concerns that have been raised through the Knightsbridge Association.
Okay, thank you.
Could I just ask one? As the freeholder. You're the freeholder, or you're the freeholder?
Yeah.
And how long have you been the freeholder?
Just over 30 years, or okay. Around 30 years.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. We'll move to questions to officers now. Thank you very much. Councillor Idris.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Why haven't we notified any properties about this? Because this is one of the biggest concerns in every residential area, one. And two, did I hear you correctly in saying that the building has been granted this license, this class since 1961? So why do you think that's the case?
So just to clarify your first question in relation to consultation, so the application was consulted by way of a site notice posted near the site, and it was advertised in the local gazette. Following the cyber incident, there was a change in the way in which that we consult and notify residents of applications. That's why there wasn't neighbour letters sent in this instance. In relation to the history of the Planning Commission, there was an application granted in 1963 that related to the site being used as a bank. That's where there was a restrictive condition which controlled it to only be used as a bank and for no other purpose, unless writing to the local planning authority and gaining planning permission, which the applicant's here for this evening. The reason for that was that there would be a concern if the site was to be used as an office. That was the reason for imposing that condition.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, just a question that's come up from this little discussion. This application, as I sort of pointed out in the first bit of questioning, could equally be for a restaurant, and we've heard from the local residents association, Knightsbridge Association, that would be a major concern. A lot of the discussion that I picked up from the document is really looking at it as what we were told, which is this is an application and the operator, the freeholder, is in advanced stages of discussion with a healthcare operator. So would we be within our rights at this stage to say yes, if members are minded to grant the E-class use for healthcare, and if the freeholder wanted to come back with a different application, then that could be considered whenever anyone, there's no restriction on them applying to de-restrict it further than that. But what we've heard most of tonight is that it's for a healthcare operator, and that's what a lot of the discussion is about. Would that be fair if that's what members want to do?
Thank you. So, as I mentioned in the presentation, the application's been submitted for a range of use classes within use class E. Officers have worked with the applicant to satisfy or to identify which use classes would be acceptable within the Knightsbridge International Centre. What I would draw members' attention to is the policies within the local plan. So there is a vision for the Knightsbridge Shopping Centre or International Centre, which does look to support it as a national and international shopping destination. There are also policies which relate to diversity of uses within town centres. That does look to support a range of town centre uses, which a restaurant may be or would be. So I think if members were concerned about specific uses or specific town centre uses, we would likely need to understand what those concerns are, and it may be concerns with proximity to residential properties or potential impact in terms of highways, pedestrian movement, etc. But you would likely need to identify, just so the applicant's aware, as to which uses wouldn't be acceptable, and then we could look to amend that condition.
Any comments from colleagues?
I think I understand what you're saying, and I'm totally with you there. However, there comes a time where you have to look at the building itself. And for instance, a restaurant use in that building will really be a problematic in so many ways, especially how are they going to bring food in? How are they going to remove it out, take it out? It's not going to come through the front door. It's not going to leave through the front door. It's going to go in the back. In the back, how narrow is the back? Is it easy? Is it possible to use it effectively? So all these things. And also my concern is, despite of the cyber attack, we didn't hear from the residents in that area clearly what they want. And I think you can't have something harmonious without having both sides of the equation looked at.
Yeah, I mean, following that, I think my concern is that residents in that building will have bought on the understanding that there's a restricted use class down below, that they may have read this in the way that I read it, which is that there's likely to be a medical use, and there are other medical uses in that street, and that's fine, and maybe people didn't raise more objections, and actually we've heard from the Knightsbridge Association saying that there is no objection to a carefully implemented medical use, and that's what I think that maybe I would personally feel comfortable restricting it to that, because this is a building that has got a very large range of potential uses, including the disruption, as we've heard from the objectors, of changing radically from its previous restricted use to restaurant or bar or other sort of entertainment use. So if you're asking us to identify what we think the harms will be, I think it would be to me, and my colleagues can add something to it, it would be harm to residential amenity by the change of use. It's just not been made clear by a particular operator. If an operator was to come forward and saying, we are a very well-established brand, we know how to operate, these will be our servicing conditions, these will how we will move items in and out, this is how we'll deal with crowds or whatever that are outside, that is a perfectly reasonable application to make. But it's very different from what we're being asked tonight, which is a very careful and precise medical use, which there are in that road, in that area as well. So it seems like a reasonable application if it's restricted to what we're being asked to consider.
Thank you, that's clear. So we can amend, or members can look to amend that condition should they wish to. So what I'm hearing is that you're concerned about use class EB, which is in the relation to the food and beverage or restaurant. Would members be happy or satisfied, with the remaining, which is EA, which is the display or retail of sale of, EA, is the sale of goods. So retail, EC is for financial services, and then EE is for the medical and health services.
We think that's a good restriction. So are we ready to move on the basis of that? I don't know whether you need some time to draw something up. Yeah.
Sorry, Chair. I was going to say that if you were going to make any further amendments than that, I would have asked you to vote on the recommendation, because the description is for the premises to be used within the wider Class E use, and if you're restricting it to medical, then that's not really in accordance with the proposal. But if it's just a case, and I do have to sort of draw your attention to the addendum report, because that changed condition 2 anyway, to take out ED. So if we're going to leave in Class EA, EC, EA, E, C and EE, then I think we can just vote on it as it is, but just with the condition 2 amended in that way, if you're happy with the other uses.
Yes, I think that's clear. And so what we're going to do is vote on the recommendation to approve, but as with the condition amended, in our layman's language, is to not allow free restaurant use, but the other classes, yeah. Okay. On that, can I see those in favour? So that, as amended, is granted. Thank you very much. Very clear. I'm just looking around to see whether our other speakers are here. For Mr. Chisholm, is Mr. Chisholm in the room yet? Can't see anyone moving. Or Mr. Dixit? You are here, okay. So I think on that basis, if we move to case number 2, which is Alan Morkhill House, and we're still waiting on Earl's Walk.
Okay, this is the application at Alan Morkhill House on St Mark's Road. So it's planning permission has applied for the redevelopment of the site with a new building, which is a 5-storey care home, which will increase the number of bedrooms on the site from 49 to 93 because there is an existing care home on the site at the moment. Just to draw your attention to the addendum report, there's just some clarification points on the condition numbers that have been referred to in the report. So this is the site location plan and the aerial view. The site is located outside of a conservation area but is adjacent to the Oxford Gardens and St Quintin's conservation area. And there are nearby listed buildings at St Charles Hospital, 105 to 123 St Mark's Road and 1 to 3 Cowper Terrace. So we just have, oopsie daisy. Sorry, we just have some, this is the street frontage on St Mark's Road of the existing building. And then there's some aerial views further along the street, all on St Mark's Road. And then this is further round to the back of the site. So you can see there's an existing access road at the side with rear car parking. And the bottom photo is the nearby, the adjacent properties on St Mark's Road. They have rear access as well. So this is the existing site plan and the proposed site plan. So as you can see, the building footprint is in a very similar location to existing. It's just a larger building. It still maintains the U shape and it maintains the vehicle access road and the parking to the rear. Then we have the context, the street context on St Mark's Road with the existing building to the north and the proposed building to the south of that slide. So our design colleagues are of the opinion that whilst it is a new building and it is bigger and it is 1 storey taller, there's still a transition between the taller buildings to the left down to the residential buildings to the right. And in that context, the design is considered to be acceptable. Just drawing members' attention to the key issues in the assessment of this application. The intensification of the use, it's an existing care home use, and policy HO5 supports older people's housing, including extra care, and a planning needs assessment has been submitted with the application. Policy colleagues have assessed that information as well. The other sort of key issue is sustainable development. So I'm conscious that this development is this proposal is redevelopment of the site with demolition of the building. So our policies look for more sustainable approaches, and so therefore with this application we have a whole life carbon report and a circular economy documents, and again our policy colleagues have assessed those issues, that information, and energy matters are being secured in a section 106 agreement including carbon offset contributions. Another key assessment issue is amenity impact, and again we have daylight sunlight assessments submitted with the application showing some minor impacts which is not considered sufficient to refuse the application. There's no overlooking or outlook impacts, and we have conditions restricting noise levels following consultation with our environmental health colleagues. Another key issue are the existing trees on the site, and in the top left hand photo is the main tree in question, is on the left of that photo. So there are 8 existing trees on site, and the proposal includes the removal of 7 of those trees. Our tree colleague is okay with the loss of 6 of these trees, but objects to the loss of the London plane tree on St Mark's Road due to the impact on the street seam. And we've assessed this and weighed up against the planning benefits of having an increased quality and quantity of care home provision on the site. And the applicant has included 2 further trees within the landscaping scheme of the proposed building, and we've secured a financial contribution for the provision of free trees off-site. Another key issue is the biodiversity net gain. This is new legislation that's been set out by the government, and we also have a policy as well, expecting 10% biodiversity net gain on site. This proposal does result in the loss of a minus 34% loss on site, but the legislation sets out that the first step is to try and secure on-site provision of biodiversity net gain, and then there's a sort of a hierarchy and a stepped process where you can then go off-site to achieve the biodiversity net gain, and then the third step is you can buy credits from the government. So with regard to any on-site biodiversity improvements, we've secured these in the Section 106 heads of terms, and then the next steps would be secured with the national legislation, and that's all set out how they do that in the legislation. So on balance, the proposal is considered acceptable, as we've balanced out the loss of the trees and biodiversity loss with the quality and quantity improvements to the specialist older persons accommodation provision, and the proposal is recommended for approval with conditions and Section 106 agreement.
Thank you very much. Quite a lot in this application. Objector Barry Munday. You have 3 minutes. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm here this evening as a representative of the Kensington Society. We urge the committee to refuse this application. Our concerns are straightforward. The quality of the existing building, the failure to justify demolition, and the environmental cost of rebuilding. Alan Moorkill House is a more accomplished building than the officer's assessment suggests. It is carefully shaped by its setting. It responds to the park opposite and to the tall wall behind, with materials, trees, and landscaping that make a positive contribution to the character of the area. The replacement would move in the opposite direction. It would be larger, taller, denser, less landscaping, fewer trees, and reduced views towards the park. That view is not ours alone. The St Helens Residents Association has also recognised the building's quality, describing it as better designed than many more recent developments in North Kensington. We accept that care home standards have changed, but the case for demolition has not been made. Policy is clear that retention and reuse should come first. And in our view, the applicant hasn't properly demonstrated why adaptation can't work. There appears to be genuine scope for adapting the existing structure, extend it to the rear, and potentially add another story. Yet those options have not been convincingly exhausted. The sustainability case is weak. Demolishing a relatively modern building will carry a major embodied carbon cost, and the replacement will still have high energy demand while falling short of the borough's own target for care homes. If overheating is a concern, the answer should be better passive design, not greater dependence on mechanical cooling. Before closure, the home appeared to have been well regarded, with 9.5 out of 10 rating and a good rating from the Care Quality Commission, which further weakens the case for wholesale replacement. In short, this proposal gives too much weight to maximising capacity and too little to retaining, adapting and improving a well-designed building in a more sustainable way. For all those reasons, we urge the committee to refuse permission.
Thank you very much. And can we hear from Mr. Dixit as the agent or applicant?
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Planning Applications Committee. My name's Neeraj Dixit. I am a chartered town planner and the agent on behalf of the applicant. The applicant would have liked to have been here this evening, but unfortunately they're abroad on business. Alan Moorkill House was not purpose-built as a care home and has been retrofitted. Providing only 49 beds, the care home is small and can no longer provide the type of accommodation and facilities for older people that is now required. For a new care home to be viable, it must have a minimum amount of accommodation of a good size and high quality and facilities and services that residents and indeed the market requires. The proposal retains a care use on the site, a previously developed site in an urban location and close to public transport and a wide range of facilities and services. The proposal seeks to appropriately optimise the use of the site to provide a state-of-the-art facility which is high quality, sustainable, energy efficient and future-proofed, for which there is a clear and demonstrable local need. The height, layout, massing, scale and design has been carefully and sensitively considered. The proposal offers high-quality accommodation and a comprehensive variety of facilities and services that cater for different levels of care, including dementia and palliative end-of-life care. The high-quality landscape design creates a visually appealing and functional outdoor environment that integrates with the proposed architecture and responds to the site's rich context. The application is the culmination of detailed, productive, and constructive pre-application engagement with officers and the applicant. I consider that the proposal is sustainable development, for which there's a presumption in favour of development, and that the proposal accords with development plan policy and the National Planning Policy Framework. So, I hope that, like your officers, members can support the scheme. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. I might just kick off with one question. It's very interesting. Is the applicant? How long has the applicant run this care home? And the applicant, is this the same applicant who is going to rebuild it and then run it afterwards?
Thank you, Chair. The applicant has run the existing care home for a number of years, and the applicant is not a developer. It's an owner and an operator of 45 care homes across the country, principally in the southeast, and they will operate the proposed care home.
Thank you. And if I understood correctly, it's actually very interesting. You mentioned that the building wasn't purpose-built as a care home. Do you have any information about what it was built for?
Chair, I do, and the planning case officer may be able to assist, but it was originally built as a sheltered housing scheme for older people. So in use class terms, it would be a Class C3 use, whereas the current proposal is for a Class C2 residential institution use, which includes a care home.
Thank you. That's a very important distinction. Colleagues, Councillor North and then Councillor Idris.
Thank you. Mr. Dixit, if I could just ask you a question about the I haven't seen anything from the ward councillors here, but I do know that this has created quite a lot of interest with local residents, and I have actually spoken to them myself on this, and they are concerned about the size of the massing of this building. And we've heard from Mr. Monday from the Kensington Society here about the concerns about sustainability, and that's a word you used yourself. So what I can't quite understand is, what is it that needs to be different in the proposed scheme that you actually have to do to demolish this building and rebuild it? Because this is going to be a considerable development and a considerable loss to the local community in the green that we talked about, as well as the impact to the environment and sustainability. Can you just kind of flesh out, what is it? Is it like they have to all have ensuite bathrooms and not bathrooms? That type of thing, if you could.
Thank you, Councillor North. You preempted my response in a way, because as Mr. Monday has acknowledged, there has been a considerable change in the requirements of modern care homes. And one of those is essentially the size of a care home to be viable and operationally efficient and effective. And that's normally considered by many operators, and my client is an operator, not a developer, to be a minimum of 85 beds. And therefore, the site, as the case officer highlighted, is constrained, but there is scope for slightly additional height, plus making better use of the basement. And the crux is that we did exhaustively, in iterative pre-application discussions with officers, look at retaining, extending, and refurbishing the existing care home, as we're required to do, but it's a positive exercise. Unfortunately, all that would increase the number of beds to would be about 60 beds, which would leave an unviable scheme. Also importantly is not just the quantitative aspects, it's the qualitative aspects. All of the proposed bedrooms would be generous sized, would have wet rooms, they'd be future-proofed, so many of the residents may, for example, during their stay in the care home, could have a standard level of residential care, but as over time, as tends to happen, their acuity needs increase because of a lack of mobility or because of dementia. The care home provides future-proofing and a standard of high-quality facilities, including dining, communal, and outdoor areas.
Thank you, Chair. I know developers will look at it from a financial point of view, whether it is financially viable or not. But then our job as councillors to look at it from the other aspect, which is the cost for biodiversity, 34%, that's a lot. Losing tree, that's a lot. But then the biggest cost of all is the disruption to the area, to the neighborhood, to the community. I was very surprised to find out that the current building was only built in 1980 something. I expected with this amount of demolition and the fact that you're going to demolish it and start all over, I expected something built after the war where money was scarce and things were built very cheaply. But this is not something that was built cheaply. So I know you said something, you alluded to the fact that you looked at redeveloping, adding, all that. I encourage you to look at it a second time because the cost of demolishing and starting all over, I think some will find very, very expensive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Idris. We have gone through an exhaustive process, also internally, as well as in pre-application discussions with officers. I can't honestly say how much the original building cost to construct, but what I can confirm is that if a property developer, which is very different to an operator such as my client, the applicant, were to look at this, retention, refurbishment, and redevelopment with that very significant capital investment and the need for additional care homes, particularly dementia care, for the planned period, it just wouldn't be viable. You touched upon two other aspects as well, which is the biodiversity and also the sustainability issue. The way that the BNG, the biodiversity net gain requirements are calculated is that any loss of tree is basically arithmetic. It's a minus. But there are a loss of trees, which we've tried very hard to avoid, but because of the need of the additional accommodation, we've not been able to retain those trees. So apart from London Plane Tree 4, all of the trees that will be lost, the council's tree officer agrees with the loss, but we are replacing them with 11 to 12 species, local native species that the council's tree officer has agreed.
Just to follow up on the point of trees, and then we'll move to officers and wrap up. I think the number that I saw of £3,000 for replacement, a contribution for replacement trees in the officer's report, is that a contribution that goes to the council for their own planting of trees, or is that what you think you will use for planting the trees on site?
Chair, there's two aspects. There are additional trees that are incorporated as part of the landscape scheme, and the landscaping scheme is also a condition on the permission, but there will be a financial benefit in the Section 106 for the council to plant trees in the borough where in a location of their choosing.
Yeah, just on that, because I think all of us as councillors are involved in tree planting efforts. The 3,000 barely digs a test pit in our borough. Do you think, as the advisor to your applicant, that there is room to increase that, because the costs of tree testing, because it's very difficult to plant in this borough, and planting is much higher? I know you might have agreed it with officers, but that's what's occurring to us up here. We're grateful for the depth of information that you've brought on this application, which is not an easy one, but that's a concern that a lot of councillors have of what the council could do with that low sum.
Chair, would you like me to respond to that? I'll take my client's instructions, but I'm very confident that financial contribution for tree planting for the council to choose as appropriate and best can be negotiated.
All right, so thank you for that. We'll move to any questions to officers. I'm just looking, any questions? Councillor North, please.
Well, trees, yes, especially with my new interest in environment. So on the basis of that, I think there is a general concern, and that's from residents as well. It's in the scale of what we're talking about here, it's relatively minor, but there are other questions about that. But with the trees, what are we talking about? Saplings, or are we talking about, for that type of money, are we talking about substantial trees that are mature?
Yep, the financial contribution came from our arboricultural officer, and I believe it's a standard cost averaged out for the standard tree planting that they carry out in the borough. I don't know the exact size of the tree, but I believe they wouldn't have gone for the smallest, but equally they can't go for the all singing or dancing huge tree, so it's somewhere in between would be my guess.
No, but my question is that we should be planting saplings for removing mature trees. Could we not do something more substantial like we do on other sites?
Yeah, I can take that back to the tree officer. And yeah.
I've got a proposal to make to fellow members on the right. I think we've had some very strong information which we didn't quite pick up from in the pack, which we thank the Mr. Dixit for helping us with, and that I've got my own experience with care facilities, and the arguments that are made are go a long way to helping me make a decision on this case. If members are thinking along the same lines, maybe let me know if we're ready to move to a vote. But just to pick up on the point, we heard the applicant's agent say that that there was leeway, that maybe we won't want to specify a number here, but I think we're making it very clear to officers if this does go ahead that we regret the large loss of mature trees, particularly in the street scene, and that we'd be looking to make more amends for that, particularly as I know there's a whole different regime for biodiversity net gain, which is handled by the legislation that we don't get involved in at all. So that bit is covered, but particularly trees, which are a very big focus, we think there's more that can be done on that, and we're just looking at officers to make sure that you've got a clear steer from us if that's how we go on the decision.
That's understood. Thank you.
On that basis, we're ready to move to a vote. So the officer recommendation.
Sorry, before we do, I think we'll probably have to clarify the exact number. And just to, it might be helpful just to answer one of the previous questions about what types of tree. So generally speaking, the tree officer will determine whether or not the loss of whatever particular tree is harmful, and then they'll determine how best to mitigate that harm. Sometimes you can't, and so they would recommend refusal. Sometimes you can, this is in their view, then they would suggest the appropriate mitigation. And so they would have considered what types of trees would mitigate that loss, or to some extent, and then the cost of that particular tree. So that's generally how that's worked out. But if members feel that a higher contribution is required, that's of course within your right. We would just need to know exactly what that number is.
Councillor North.
Just to respond, yes, because in both Delgado and St Helens Ward, this has come up recently, in recent months, on the doorstep, in fact, and that was their concern. It's not just the on-site trees we're talking about here, we're talking about the off-site mitigation for this as well. We would like to be reassured somehow, and I'm happy for officers to word this, that we're getting bang for buck here. We're getting proper trees, not saplings that are going to die after half a season. That, if we can be reassured by that, then I'm happy to support the suggestion from the chair.
Sorry, yeah, just to clarify, the 3,000 related to off-site trees, didn't it?
Yes, and that's
there's a landscaping scheme for on-site, so we're talking about off-site. So the report says, the heads of terms say 3,000 at the moment. So if we just leave it that's to be negotiated between the applicant and the tree officer, with a view to having trees that are more than saplings or whatever, but just to leave it for now, that is to be negotiated between our tree officer and the applicant. Okay,
yes,
so
and noting that the applicant's agent has been will take their client's instruction, but was very positive that something significant could be done there. Yes, Councillor Idris.
Just a question to officers. It's, I mean, it says here we're failing to meet the minimum 10% biodiversity net gain required on site. If we keep, I mean, how serious are we about our biodiversity record in this borough if we keep allowing developers to not meet the minimum criteria and just offset something somewhere else? I don't know. I mean, what does it say about us and our, you know, and yeah.
Oops. Yeah, there's two sort of paths on the biodiversity net gain. We do have a policy with that aspiration, but it's also national legislation which does allow for this. It's like a hierarchical approach to the offsetting of any loss on site. So it's not the statutory legislation doesn't say you cannot have any loss. It says 10% increases the aim, and then it allows you to. It does allow you to offset that any loss, either on site, then off site, and then with purchasing credits. So.
And just to correct me, it's not something that the local authority negotiates. There's a national formula, it's national legislation, so it's not something that we fully take a view on here.
Biodiversity colleagues have been involved in this application and have helped us to maximise what we can get on site. So in terms of, we've got a number of conditions protecting, we've gone through the, I think there's bats, there's birds, we've gone through landscape enhancement management plan, I think it's called. I'm just seeing number 9.
I'm going to. Yep. We've got a bit of time because we've got 15 cases to go in this session. So I think we've got to the point where we've got to the nub of this. So the officer recommendation is to grant. We've asked for extra care, shall we say, on tree planting in that particular number to be conditioned. With that in mind, can I see those in favour of subject to the legal agreement? That will be part of it. Can I see those in favour? So that is granted. Thank you very much. With the one more speaker case, then we've got 15 or so other cases to get through before 6:30, but they will go quite fast. I don't know whether Mr. Chisholm, who is in the building yet. If he isn't, then we just go ahead with 29 Earls Walk. We will just hear from the objector and not from the applicant. Councillor Husband is stepping to one side. Thank you. And because we're hearing from the officers, so if you could keep your microphone off, because otherwise the sound doesn't get around properly. Thank you. So 29 Earls Walk, thank you.
Lovely. So this is an application to deal with a condition 4, which is the construction and transport management plan. It follows planning permission at the application site to erect a new dwelling house. So we have the aerial view and the site location plan. So the property is just located at the end of Earls Walk, close to the corner with Pembroke Square. And we've had, just to point you to the addendum report, we've had 2 further objections. They may be a bit jumbled up in the addendum report. One has some photos of an Ocado lorry currently stuck on Earls Walk, and another is a letter from a councillor. So just have some further photos of the site itself, taken from Pembroke Square and from Earls Walk itself. So this application, this construction management plan, follows detailed discussion with our highways officers, and they've been involved since September 2025. There's been a previous submission for a CTMP, and that was considered to be unacceptable by our highways colleagues, and that application was withdrawn because it was recommended for refusal. The previous CTMP involved a road closure on Earls Walk and involved directing traffic north on this location plan through St Edmunds Square, St Edward's Square, sorry, up to Earls Court Road. That also involved skips to be parked on Earls Walk and concrete deliveries on Earls Walk. So the further detailed discussions with our highways officers have led to this current proposal, which our highways officers believe is acceptable. So this scheme, this is the construction traffic route. So you can see the red line on the draw. The green line is the access of the vehicles. So there's a shaded area just shown with it highlighted in yellow, and that would require a temporary traffic order to allow traffic to go two-way in this part of the street. So the construction vehicles and delivery vehicles would use the green route, do a 3-point turn and reverse into Earls Walk, and then use the red line to exit. This keeps the traffic away from the local school and means it doesn't have to go around St Edward's Square up to get to Earls Court Road. The proposal is also for larger concrete deliveries to be on this drawing. They're shown in the 2 suspended parking bays highlighted in yellow, which is adjacent to 20A Pembroke Square. And it does allow for some lighter deliveries to be here, so anything that can be carried could also use this street and doesn't have to go into Earls Walk. So it's just to clarify, there is no road closures proposed, but what they're proposing, or what they've included, is if a vehicle is delivering and it's parked at this end of Earls Walk, there would be signage and directions to vehicles so that to show how you could actually get into Earls Walk as an alternative route whilst that delivery lorry is there. The CTMP includes that deliveries will be restricted to 9:30 to 3 p.m. during term time and 9:30 to 4 p.m. outside of term time, Monday to Friday. As you can see from these drawings, it includes traffic marshals, it includes a booking system for deliveries, and it includes a note that the existing refuse delivery days, pickup days, which is Monday and Thursday. Okay, yep, it's noted that there is a photo in the addendum report of an Ocado lorry that seems to have got stuck just at the corner of Pembroke Mews down to Earls Walk. It's just to note that if there is a delivery lorry here at the moment, that's no different to normal deliveries at the moment, and that where that Ocado delivery van is wouldn't be affected because it's a manoeuvre that actually you couldn't do if there was a vehicle here, and it's a manoeuvre that is existing and stays the same as proposed. So our highways officer has seen the photo and has seen the further objections, but has raised no further issues. So in conclusion, the application is recommended for approval.
Oh, thank you very much. I've got as an objector, Mr. Tim Honour. Objection was made by Timothy Bolton. Just looking around to see. You also.
Yeah.
What's your name? Just
Tim Honour.
You're Tim Honour, okay. And you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
I am speaking today as the next door neighbour to the proposed development at 29 Earls Walk, so I will inevitably experience firsthand the impact of the construction traffic management plan you are considering for this building, which will blight my own. A number of detailed planning points have already been raised in writing regarding this meeting and previous planning meetings. As the Council have been deaf to those concerns raised, in the short time available, I want to focus on procedural concerns and why they matter to the fairness of this decision. My concern is that there is still no clear published response showing how residents' objections to the CTMP have been assessed and answered. The officer report simply states the CTMP is satisfactory without any justification or addressing the main concerns raised. In earlier planning applications, residents raised concerns including height and parking, yet from a resident's perspective, it has never been clear how those objections were fully addressed. That undermines confidence that the process is being applied consistently and that residents' concerns are making a meaningful difference. Now, with the CTMP before you, the same concern arises again. A proposal affecting neighbouring residents appears to be moving toward approval without a sufficiently clear account of how objections have been considered. From where I stand, literally next door, I do not feel like the level of openness and scrutiny residents are entitled to expect. As someone who will be directly affected by the disruption this plan may cause, I accept that development happens, but residents are entitled to a process that is fair, consistent, and properly evidenced. So before reaching a decision, I respectfully ask for the committee to consider 3 things. First, whether all objections have been properly reviewed and clearly answered. Second, whether the Council has applied its policies and procedures consistently throughout this matter. Third, what impact any failure to address those matters properly may have had on residents and the reliability of the outcome. This is about whether residents can have confidence that decisions affecting their homes and daily lives are reached fairly, consistently, and on a properly reasoned basis. Does the Council believe their approach to this matter would stand up to public scrutiny? And that's it.
Thank you very much. I just want to check that there is nobody from the applicant here to speak. Is that right? There's no one here. All right, so now we move directly to questions from councillors to Mr. Honour. Are there any questions? And then we'll pick up those points, particularly with officers about process. Councillor Idris.
Question: will if the developer used smaller vehicles, will that?
Well, I've got four things in particular. The lorries in the CTMP, the lorries appear to be 2 metres 55 wide. Yet the Council's policy says that lorries wider than 2 metres are not allowed in mews. They shouldn't be manoeuvring in mewses either. Having skips outside other people's houses I did not think was allowed. There is no footway. There is no pavement. Earls Walk is a single track road, so you have no choice but to walk down the middle of the road if you want to or need to walk down Earls Walk, and also going the wrong way down the one way. I think it's dangerous.
Councillor North.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Honour. You make a very compelling case. I'm very familiar with this road, and I'm very familiar with this the history of this case here, and it has been amended and changed over the time, and there are still concerns over it, I have to say myself. I'm very sorry not to see the applicant here because I had some questions for the applicant, so I'm very sympathetic towards your cause. Thank you.
So can it be discussed without the applicant here?
They can't be compelled to turn up. We can just draw our own conclusions, and if we don't have the information, then we'll have to consider that as well. Okay, questions to officers. I've got
I can answer one of the questions that was just asked about smaller vehicles. Yep. Yeah, I've discussed that with our highways officer. Apparently it was explored whether you could use the smaller size vehicles, but that would add 6 months onto the construction time period, and highways officers felt that that was unacceptable. As far as I understand...
Just on that,
yep.
Who has said that it's 6 months more for the smaller vehicles? Was it the applicant?
I'm not sure. That's just the highways officer was satisfied that it would add 6 months on, and that element wasn't acceptable. There was also, as far as I understand, the reason for the concrete loading area to the side, that's for the larger vehicles. So it's not that very, very large vehicles are being used. They've gone for a medium-sized vehicle.
But it's still wider than 2 metres.
Excuse me, two things. First of all, we have to try and work our way through, so we can't deal with any extra comments from the floor. And secondly, if you could turn your microphone off, please, now, because that will enable us to hear what the officers are saying clearly, and then we'll try and consider all these points. Thank you very much.
But my concern still remains. We're talking 6 months. But disruption, but then it is actually more beneficial for the community to actually have, to have a smaller vehicles, and at the cost, if it's 6 months more, I think, don't you think that's something a little bit makes more sense to just extend the build and safeguard the community?
We might have a further way of answering this. Might you be Mr. Chisholm?
Can we go back?
Yeah.
Though?
Wait, just give a second. Might you be Mr. Chisholm? Right. Could you put your microphone on? It's my, as chair's choice, thank you for making it. I am allowed to change the order slightly because you didn't get a chance to hear what the objector has said, and we didn't get a chance as councillors to ask you any questions. And so if you've got your breath back, are there any remarks that you'd like to make, or are you happy for us to go straight into questions to you?
I'm happy to go straight to questions. Thank you very much.
That's much appreciated. Just in summary, the objector has raised a number of process questions about the council and how it's handled the objections to it, and so officers will come to that, and that's not your business. But the concerns are this is a very complicated route in a very small road where there look like millimetres to spare. There's a concern over the size of vehicles, and officers had said that when they were asked could you use Cabstar or narrower vehicles for it, that it would add 6 months to the construction phase. Could you comment on that, size of vehicles and why it would take so much longer?
I think it's 6 months. I'm not sure if I can back that up substantially, but I think, we've tried to balance with the CTMP, obviously the complexities of the site, as you have all said, with trying to make things happen in a reasonably kind of prompt order. And I think it has a kind of knock-on effect if we have to use smaller vehicles. It's not just one part of the project that takes a bit longer. They all end up taking a bit longer too. Our traffic consultant, they're very familiar with Earlswalk. We spent a lot of time down there, and they're happy that the size of vehicle that's being proposed can be safely used. There are lots of kind of provisions of traffic marshalling provisions, for example, that are there to try and make sure, to ensure that that is something that is safe and doesn't cause damage to anything or harm to anybody.
And thank you. And just on the safe use, is what I couldn't quite work out is whether the roads are closed for the full day or just just are the roads, are the local diversions in place when there is a vehicle that is making a delivery or collection from the site?
Yes, the latter. So the signs will only be there when a delivery is booked. So the road will be open all of the times.
And third question from me, sorry to rush you, is for lighter vehicles, I think we heard from officers, or it's in the report, that there is an ability for them not to have to draw up exactly outside, and that they could park around the corner and something could be carried around, and it would mean that the road wasn't blocked and the vehicles didn't have to move through the small street. Is that part of your understanding about how things would also work?
Not quite. The parking bays around the corner, they're to be used only when we have a vehicle that's too big to use the parking bay outside the site. And in our scope of works, that's really just concrete pours. So when we've got a concrete pour, we'll need to suspend those parking bays, park the concrete truck on that corner, and use kind of tubes to take it to site.
Thank you. Councillor Idris, I know you had questions.
I'm still unclear why it is smaller vehicles to move in and out are not used, even if they are add 6 months to the construction. When you weigh it, it's against the residents' residents' ability to be able to move up and down the street feeling safe. All that, I think, is not unreasonable to add 6 months to.
To answer that, I think we have never proposed that vehicles, big or small, apart from the really big ones, would park around the corner from the site. Even if we downgraded the size of the vehicle to something smaller, we'd still be proposing that they park outside the site, and deliveries require a temporary road closure. The reason for that is, well, to do with the programme, as we said, but also health and safety. We don't want to have people handballing materials around the corner if we can avoid it. So from a CDM perspective, it's not desirable that they would park the vehicles around the corner. So there's two reasons for that. One is health and safety, the other is programme. So yeah, that's the reason that deliveries is considered the safest and most kind of sensible, straightforward way to do it.
That's clear. Councillor North, and then we'll finish off with officers, and then we'll move to decide, because it's a very short time now.
Yes, just very briefly, Mr. Chisholm, thank you very much for this, because you will be aware that this is a very contentious and a very difficult location for you to do your construction here. And you've also got a public house on the corner, which at this time of year is very popular, with people going backwards and forwards. Plus, you've got pedestrian access, and there is no separate sidewalk there. So it's a very, very difficult one for you to do. Is there? And we're not going to be debating and adding and subtracting. This is a discharge of conditions. So did you have a plan B if this is not accepted tonight?
I mean, realistically, it would require a big change. I think the construction program and methodology, I mean, I think really need good access to the site, and I say good, the best we can get, which is on this very constrained road for a pretty constrained site. And I don't think there is much we could do to scale back, what we already have proposed. I think without incurring, the time is a problem, but I think from I'm an architect, the health and safety side is probably more of a concern about these alternatives, which require more moving and more kind of granular actions. And on the other side of that, I'm pretty confident, I'm very kind of comfortable that what we're proposing is safe because of the marshalling and because of the booking system, because of, this is going to be very heavily regulated by the contractor. And I think those measures are good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. So in the last moments of this, were all very straightforward answer. Were all normal due processes followed in considering objectors' points on this CTMP?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And very briefly, yeah.
There's a summary of the consultation responses and the objections in paragraph 7.3 of the committee report, and the objections are also published in the committee report as well and available on our website. So we have taken them into account, and we have also discussed the objection points with the highways officer as well specifically.
Thank you. Look, I think we need to move to a decision here. We're approving a detail of a CTMP when we can't redesign it. I think we've had a very fair hearing of the objectors' points, which we've then discussed with the applicant. I'm satisfied that this is the best plan that there can be, and we've seen a lot of them through this committee in difficult circumstances. So for my colleagues, are you in a position now to move to a decision? Okay. So the recommendation that this committee approves the details of condition 4. Can I see those in favour? Okay. Thank you. So thank you everyone for your cooperation, and that condition is approved. I know it's been a lot of detail in it. Now we're going to quickly move through cases 5 to 18, where there are no speakers, and I think there might. Councillor Husband is returning to his chair, and I think there may not be one image, but we're not expecting a presentation on these. You're just going to announce. Remind us what it is so that we can get to the pack in order. So, Gloucester Road and Cromwell Road, please.
Thank you. This application seeks advertisement consent for the addition of a temporary shroud, as can be seen on the slide before you in the proposed visual. This would be for a period of 12 months. That concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions. Okay.
12-month advertising shroud. No particular points on it. People happy to come to a decision on this? Okay. Officer's recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour? Thank you. That's granted. Number 6 is Eldon House.
Thank you. This is a further advertisement consent for an advertisement within a shroud. This is a temporary permission or temporary advertisement consent, sorry, for 12 months again. The officer recommendation is to grant, subject to that temporary condition. Concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? This is 12 months. Yeah. Okay. Officer recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour? That is granted. Case 7 is 350 to 3528 Kings Road.
Thank you. This is a advertisement consent for an advertisement within a shroud on Kings Road. This application is for 8 months. Officer's recommendation is to grant, subject to the condition controlling it to 8 months.
Okay.
Concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. And there's a good picture of it. Any questions on that, or are people happy to move to a decision? Okay. Recommendation is to grant. This is for 8 months at this site. Can I see those in favour? Thank you. Case 8, Park International Hotel.
Thank you. This is for a shroud advertisement for 12 months. Officer recommendation is to grant, subject to the condition restricting it to 12 months only.
Just checking. For some reason, I'd written 6 months on it. Can I just see what the time is?
I will double check the condition as well.
Yeah.
I think the title in this one may have included 6 months, but the actual wording of the condition was for 12, and the application applied for was for 12.
Okay. So 12. We're granting 12 here. Just checking the number. I don't know why I'd written maybe a reference to 6 somewhere. I mean, it says it is 12 and 4.1. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry,
Good.
12 months.
Yeah. Good. All right. There it is. Any questions or ready for a decision? Recommendation is to grant for the 12 months. Those in favour? Thank you. That's granted. Number 9, Flat B 20 Tadema Road. How will you say that?
Thank you. This application is a certificate of lawfulness for some replacement windows on a like-for-like basis. The reason it's before members this evening is that RBKC are the applicant. The officer recommendation is to grant. That concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And they're in place. It's just a certificate now. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. No objections? Any questions? All right. Recommendation to grant. Can I see those in favour? Okay. That is Tadema Road granted. Number 10 is Knight's House, Hortensia Road.
Thank you. Again, this application is before members this evening as RBKC are the applicant. The proposal seeks for some alterations, at roof level. The officer recommendation is to grant, subject to conditions. That concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you again. No objections. These are repairs. If people are happy, we can move to a vote. Okay, officer recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour? Hortensia Road, Knight's House is granted. 11 is 51 Goulburn Road.
Yep, this one is me. This is, again, another RBKC applicant. It's the property on the corner. It's for replacement windows. And again, the recommendation is to approve with no objections.
Okay, that's a good summary. Are people happy to move to a vote on this one? No question to write. Can I see those in favour? Okay, that is granted. 12, Central Library.
Yep, a slightly different one. This is an RBKC application again, but it's slightly different. It's a listed building. Just to note, the addendum report just has a correction. It's grade 2 star listed, and we referred to it as being grade 2 at some points in the report. It's for repair works to the roof, and it's for some alterations to the man-safe system that was previously approved. The officer's recommendation is approval, and there are no objections.
Thank you. All right with this one? Recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour? This is for listed building consent. That is granted. 13, 210 Ladbroke Grove.
Okay, again, an RBKC application for windows. Properties in the conservation area, and the recommendation is for approval with no objections.
Thank you. Same for this, no objections. Can I see those in favour of granting? That is granted. Tavistock Crescent, case 14.
Yep, this is again an RBKC application for windows. It's a slightly larger block of buildings though, so it's a more modern development, and it's aluminium windows. The property isn't in a conservation area, and the recommendation is to approve with no objections.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor North, question.
Sorry, it's very briefly, because this is a very large development, yep. And it may not necessarily for planning consent review, but is this the council are proposing to do this for the bit. We are responsible for the replacement of windows, and are we confident that they actually all do need replacing? Because this is a lot of money being spent on a redevelopment, and I'm just questioning whether that is the case.
I can confirm that it's the council housing department have made the application, and they are proposing to replace all the windows. I can't answer for the applicant as to whether they.
So then my only secondary question is the consultation on this. Is this another one because of the cyber attack? We haven't been able to properly consult with individual leaseholders stroke tenants?
Let me just. It's got a 2025 number, so what that might mean is that there was some consultation, some letters carried out before the cyber attack. Then residents weren't able to view the documents.
Okay.
And then after the cyber attack, it was just a site notice and a notice in the paper.
It's just the reason I mention it. It's such a big expenditure for the local council in current budget restraints. I just want to be confident that this is the right decision. And I don't get residents come up to me, because one of the residents is in my own ward, and coming up to me and say, why are we replacing the windows and spending all this money when they don't need it? Okay. That's fine.
Maybe I can ask for the confirmation that just because if we grant planning permission, it doesn't oblige the applicant to carry out the works. They're still at liberty to review their work and decide whether they want to do it or not, which we can note if we want to, that it was discussed about how strictly necessary the works were. Yeah, okay. But in general terms, if the works are to take place in planning consent terms, are members ready to vote? Okay, can I see those in favour of voting? Thank you. And you've got the note about the informative about deciding whether it's necessary. 15 is Sheffield Terrace, 3136 to 77. And Councillor North has got a question.
Yep, this one is a RBKC windows again. We have had, I think it's in the addendum report, some last comments today from leaseholders in the block. They're saying They're not saying that they were not consulted. They're saying that so RBKC has to serve notices. The applicant has to serve notices on anyone with a leasehold or freehold interest in the land, and the applicant has signed the certificate B to say that they have served notices in October and November, I think it was, or September, October, and the leaseholders are saying they did not receive the notices. So it's not a consultation matter in terms of planning. But all we need in terms of the planning authority is for the applicant to have signed the correct certificate on the application form and to say that they've notified leaseholders. It does come up quite a lot with leaseholder and freeholders, but we don't require any evidence that the notice was served or that it was received.
Yes, sorry, this is in my own ward, and residents have spoken to me about this. I guess my concern is that I'm not confident that the correct consultation with leaseholders in particular on this. I don't think the works are controversial as such. I'm looking at one of the residents who is in the room with us this evening. I'm not worried about the controversial aspect of it, but I really would like to see consultation carried out with the leaseholders. I'm not really confident that this does affect leaseholders and that they would like to see that.
Yeah, because they have to pay for it, don't they?
So this might be an interesting legal point to clarify what bit of consultation was or wasn't carried out, or what we can do about it.
I don't know what was carried out because I only got to hear about this sort of very late this afternoon. If a certificate B was submitted to us, we do have to take that at face value because we can't go behind that. So if the applicant is saying that they consulted the leaseholders and have signed the certificate B, okay, we have to take that at face value. What it does, if it turns out that they didn't actually do what they said they had done, it might mean that the planning permission is at risk of a challenge, but that would be at the discretion of the courts. So as far as we are concerned, we've done our own consultation, in the usual way, and the applicants say that they have carried out what they have to do, which we have to take at face value. So we either proceed...
And we are the applicant, right? So the question Councillor North is asking is, did the borough issue the... Yeah, or whoever's acting on behalf.
Whoever's. My worry is I don't want residents of this development to come back to their local ward councillors to say this wasn't done properly, and you had the chance to question that in chamber, which we're doing tonight. Is there a way we can possibly defer it? Could we go do that consultation? It wouldn't be a long-winded thing, and these aren't essential works. These are improvement works, and they are pretty much like for like. But I would just like to have the confidence of the residents of this block to know that there was some other step of scrutiny.
Councillor Idris, same?
Yeah, and also just a slight comment. When you're dealing with leaseholders and social housing properties, the council want to do something, but you have to remember the leaseholders pay for what the council wants to do. So so I think we need to be very mindful of that.
So I think I'm sensing that it isn't an objection to the works, but because it's only just come up this morning that there's an expression of concern over the process of the notification, that we might be safer to defer this for clarification.
Yeah, I think we can. I think typically you would defer it for planning matters, but I think it's not a refusal, I suppose. So that's.
Well, if you're worried that the correct process hasn't been carried out, it's just a question of checking that the leaseholders were consulted. Then yes, let's defer.
Okay.
And bring it back.
For that.
I was just going to add that there is major works. Also, there are other works for this development as well, and I don't want residents, whether they be leaseholders or tenants, to be confused with the two works. I don't think this work itself is controversial, but I would just like to be reassured that if we could defer it or delay it in some way and make sure that that's checked, I'd be really happy. Thank you.
So our proposal is to defer for that information to be checked. Can I see those in favour of deferring? Okay, so to propose a deferral, Councillor North will propose and Councillor Idris will second. So the motion now is on that recommendation, on that proposal to defer. Can I see those in favour of deferring? Okay, so Sheffield Terrace is deferred.
And just to confirm, is this deferred for the what we need to do to bring it back is to confirm that the correct consultation is taking place?
Yeah, thank you. 16 is 1 Oakworth Road.
Thank you. I would draw members' attention to the addendum report with some additional conditions. The application is before members this evening as RBKC are the applicant. It seeks planning permission for a single-storey rear and side extension, outbuilding and associated alterations, including the addition of an air source heat pump. The site can be seen on this slide identified by the red arrow. There have been no objections. The officer recommendation is to grant, subject to the conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? No questions. All right. Officer recommendation is to grant. Can I? This is for 1 Oakworth Road. Can I see those in favour? Thank you. That's all for. Yeah, all for to grant. 17 Flat 555 Linden Gardens.
Yes, this is an application for an additional floor to the roof of the building. The site is on the corner and is, as you can see from the aerial views, is actually 1 storey lower than the adjacent buildings. This follows planning permission that's previously been granted for an identical scheme, and I just have a slide showing the current proposal, the previously approved proposal, and there are objections to the proposal, and this is because there was a previous refusal with a dismissed appeal, but that was for 2 additional stories, so it's just to show that for context, that's the dismissed appeal that the objectors have raised. So the recommendation is for approval, and nothing further to add.
Thank you. Just looking at the surrounding area, a lot of the buildings around there do have the same feature of a roof at this level, an extension at this level. Yeah. Okay. Any questions? Okay. Officer recommendation is to grant. Can I see those in favour? Thank you. That is granted. 18 Flat C Davis Court, Argyle Road.
This is an application for a new air conditioning unit within the terrace of one of the flats in the block, and you can see the blue line is the block of flats, and the dashed red line is the flat in question. Here we have some aerial views, and I've circled there where the air conditioning unit is proposed to be. So there's 2 flats next to each other with their glass sort of conservatory terrace extensions, and the photo in the middle shows it's almost like a cupboard when you're looking from the application site as to where the air conditioning unit would be. The photo on the right shows the view from there looking up towards the rest of the building. We have a location plan showing that area there. And then we have a cross-section, which is easier, existing and proposed. And because of its location, it has a bespoke acoustic enclosure to mitigate noise and disturbance. And we've consulted with our noise colleagues who are happy with the proposal in terms of there won't be any noise impact on neighbours. Have a few elevations just showing it from the neighbours' side and from the application side, and then this just shows the acoustic mitigation. So there's acoustic panels around. It's almost effectively a cupboard. Acoustic panels shown in turquoise on this drawing, and the recommendation is to approve subject to conditions.
Okay, and this obviously has the usual switch-off condition that if it doesn't comply with strict sound vibration performances, that if there is a complaint. Obviously, these modern air conditioning units and setups are much better than some of the very old ones that people find on buildings, but that is usually found to be the case at committee, that condition is the safeguard.
Yeah, we have that.
Councillor North.
Just again, this is in my ward, and I know that some of my residents have objected to this, and the main reasons for the objection is just further to what Councillor McAvoy said there. It's not just the operation of the machinery itself; it's the anti-vibration holders that is the other concern. And I see that there is a condition that both those, the actual operation of the switch off and the actual brackets that hold it, my residents can be assured that that is taken care of, and there is a enforcement process if it goes outside of those.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, ready to move to a decision. Thank you. Those in favour of granting this application, please show. Okay, that is granted. There's now one further process. We're at the end of my section of this meeting. As I understand it, to have a break, do we need to adjourn? Is that the phrase? I'm just looking carefully. What?
Just adjourn, but the second part is due to start at 6:30. So obviously we can't adjourn for very long.
What I'm proposing is what I'm proposing for colleagues and for officers to reset all our systems, presentations, and ourselves is, and with apologies to those who have come for a 6:30 start. This has been quite a heavy session. That we will come back from our adjournment at 6:45.
It has to be by then because you've only got 15 minutes, so it might be. Well, you're supposed to start within 15 minutes.
Oh, perfect.
So I think if we could come back at 6:40. 6:40?
Well, sorry, I'm just the adjournment is a maximum. There's no maximum time for adjournment, is there? New process.
No, except that when a meeting starts at a set time, you have 15 minutes within which you have to start it.
Right. So it's 18:29 now. So if I string it out for another 30 seconds, okay. Mm-hmm. So we will restart 15 minutes later at 18:44. That's right with everyone. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. So this is now adjourned. Do we need to vote on the adjournment, or is that's declared by me? Thank you. All right. Thank you. We're just getting into position to unadjourn and to restart the meeting.
This one, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for bearing with us, everybody. You're all very welcome at this meeting of the Planning Applications Committee. We have a very long agenda. We actually began at 4:30, and at 6:30 we concluded the first part, and we had a short break. So we're now hopefully back for the second half, so to speak. Perhaps it might help if I refresh the people who've newly joined us. I'm Councillor James Husband. I'm Chairman of the Planning Applications Committee. To my right are my fellow councillors, and we will be making the decisions on the cases in front of us this evening. To my left, I'm joined by planning officers. They will be offering us advice, making the presentations, and the officer team this evening is led by Wade Banks, who's acting on behalf of the Head of Development Management. Okay, with those preliminaries, just for completeness, are there any declarations of interest or other declarations for the cases in the second half? No, there are none. Very good. Well, thank you very much indeed. Well, in that case, perhaps it would help if I can just indicate the order we're going to consider things. So in a moment or two, we will take 9 Latimer Road. We will then consider Egerton Court, Clavel Street, then Smith Terrace, Harrington Court, Holland Street, and then applications in the King's Road, Colville Mews, Victoria Gardens, Gordon Place, a garage next to 51 Cathcart Road, and then Sloane Street to conclude. So we can make a start with the application in the North Pack, Unit 9, Latimer Road. So who is going to present that for us? That's going to be Amanda. Great. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. So this is an application at Latimer Industrial Estate on Latimer Road. It's an application for a 5-storey building with Class E use and 7 residential units. So we have the site location plan and aerial view here. Just to note in the addendum report that we've received further objections from a councillor, neighbours and the St Quintin and Woodlands Neighbourhood Association, and they're all printed in the addendum report as well. A key issue that makes this slightly unusual to one of our normal decisions is that we're not taking a decision on whether we would be refusing or approving the application here. We have an appeal that's been submitted by the applicant for non-determination. So this report is for members to take a view on the direction that the council would have taken if we had still been the local planning authority. So it's helpful for our case at that appeal. Now, the key issue here is the planning history. So there is a planning refusal for a similar scheme in May 2025. The appeal was dismissed by an inspector, but the inspector concluded that the proposal itself was acceptable and that there were no amenity impacts, so they disagreed with the council's reason for refusal. The appeal was actually dismissed because the Section 106 legal agreement was not signed in time during that appeal process. So what we have here is a resubmission of that application with some minor changes to the internal layouts and the reduction in the size of a fourth floor balcony. I have some existing and proposed drawings. The assessment in the report mainly focuses on the changes, though, between this application and the previous permission. So you can see existing and proposed drawings. That's the front elevation. We have the rear elevation, and then we have some sections, 2 sections through the building. So there are objections to the scheme, 29 objections, I think it was in the report, and the further objections in the addendum report. Officers have taken into consideration the inspector's decision, and we are recommending that we would have recommended it for approval had we still been the local planning authority. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, that was quick. Thank you very much indeed. Now, we do have registered speakers for this. So if I could ask, I think Emma don't code. Emma, you are coordinating the objectors along with Councillor Beckett. Is that right?
Yeah, Councillor Beckett has handed over his time to the residents, so
okay.
we will have 5 minutes.
All right. So is he actually present?
No.
Right. Okay. That's an interesting point, which I'm not going to pursue. So I think what I'm going to say is that there will be a shared, Councillor, I should explain to members of the public, Councillor Beckett could get up and say, thank you, Chairman, I support the objectors and I wish to my time to be added to this. So it's, I think it is in order. So Emma, when you are ready, please, you go ahead, and you perhaps, if people, as we go along, if people introduce themselves to explain who they are. So please go ahead when you're ready. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm reading this statement on behalf of a resident who's affected. I'm here tonight because this application is not just about another building on a street. For my family, this decision will affect how we live every single day and whether our home continues to feel safe, healthy, and therapeutic for a child with needs where privacy is paramount. I really need the committee to understand what is at stake. Our rooftop terrace is an essential part of our home life. It is one of the only spaces where my child can feel calm, regulated, and free from stress. It is where he gets sunlight, fresh air, and relief. That openness, that natural light, that feeling of space and sky genuinely matters to his well-being, and yet this proposal threatens to take all that away. What frightens me most is that there's not been a proper assessment of what losing that sunlight and daylight will actually mean for us as human beings living there. The report speaks in technical language, percentages and diagrams, but nowhere do they truly grapple with the lived reality of what happens when a family home becomes darker, more enclosed and overshadowed by a much larger structure directly opposite. The applicant's own material already identifies very serious daylight reductions to parts of our home. We're talking about losses far beyond the guidelines of acceptance, and if those figures they are willing to admit to, I honestly fear the real-world impact could be worse. What is deeply concerning is there appears to have been no meaningful site-specific study of how sunlight will actually fall across our rooftop terrace throughout the year, not in winter when the sunlight is already limited, not during the afternoons when the terrace is most used, not during the darker months when access to natural light matters most for mental well-being. Instead, we are being asked to rely largely on a simplified exercise based around a single point in March, as though human life only happens on one day of the year. But our family lives there every single day. My child does not stop needing sunlight in October or January or late afternoons in December when shadows become oppressive and overwhelming. The reality is this development could leave our terrace darker, colder and overshadowed, and most importantly, overlooked for substantial parts of the year, fundamentally changing the way it can be used. Once that sunlight is gone, it's gone permanently. No condition can give it back later. And this is not simply an emotional plea. Planning policy exists to protect people from exactly this kind of harm. The National Planning Policy Framework gives a high standard of amenity for existing residents. The BRE guidance specifically says roof terraces like ours should be properly assessed for sunlight loss. The design code for this area exists precisely to stop buildings becoming overbearing and oppressive to neighbouring homes. Most importantly of all, the Council has legal duties under the Equalities Act. These duties are not box-ticking exercises. They require real consideration of how decisions affect disabled people differently. In our case, the terrace is not incidental, it's therapeutic, it's part of how my child experiences safety, calm and quality of life. I'm asking the committee tonight to look beyond the drawings and technical reports and think about the human consequences. Think about what it means for a child to lose sunlight, to lose openness, to lose privacy, to lose the one outdoor space where they feel comfortable. The threat of being directly and suddenly overlooked in this space is untenable. Development should not come at the expense of making neighbouring homes darker, more oppressive and less humane. Thank you.
Hello. Hello, I'm Bella Hodart. Good evening, Chairman and Councillors. I'm a resident of Latimer Road and deeply worried about this proposal, which will fundamentally, contrary to policy LR5 of the adopted St Quentin and Woodlands Neighbourhood Plan, which forms part of the statutory development plan and must be afforded full weight. Policy LR5 was specifically drafted to ensure redevelopment along Latimer Road steps down appropriately towards the northern end of the street, protecting residents from excessive height, enclosure overlooking and loss of light. Instead, this proposal seeks a building approaching 17.7 metres in height, substantially exceeding the successful and locally supported four-storey redevelopment at Unit 1 in our street, and resulting in an overbearing and harmful form of development entirely out of keeping with this part of Latimer Road. There remains no convincing evidence that the applicant has properly addressed the previously identified impacts on daylight, privacy, enclosure, or neighbouring amenity, nor that meaningful changes have been made from the previously refused scheme. The St Quentin and Woodlands Neighbourhood Forum supports regeneration and new homes. Indeed, the Forum is already working with the RBKC officers on revisions to the planning framework for Latimer Road to support viable redevelopment with genuine community backing. Approving an overscaled and policy conflicting proposal at this stage would undermine both public confidence in the neighbourhood planning process and the long-term vision for sensitive regeneration along Latimer Road. Thank you.
Oh, hello, thank you.
Time is up, but there's time for you perhaps to say a sentence or two.
I have a 1 minute time statement. Thank you. I agree with the previous objections, especially noise pollution and increased reverberation from trains. I'm Jo Langton. I represent the group in Inham Road, which is directly affected behind the building. But also the West London Line embankment that runs north-south between RBKC and LBHF was designated a site of ecological interest in 2022. We have rare small birds, nesting sparrowhawks, kestrels, and recently a new family of hedgehogs. These are all species under threat, which planners have a duty to protect. Under Action Plan B13 of RBKC's Biodiversity Plan for 22 to 27, you have made a binding commitment to protect local wildlife corridors.
I'm going to have to stop you there, I'm afraid. Sorry, time is up. You've had the...
Can I just quickly say that this cannot have been done properly, the assessment,
no, I think
because
we've got,
no one has visited the site
I think
yet.
we understand the points that have been made and also in the objections.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. So, I beg your pardon. So the applicant and agent are all present. How would you like to do this? You've got the same time, so it's actually it's more like 6 minutes. Please go ahead and please introduce yourself as you go along.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Patrick Efferson and I'm Chief Executive of Rathplace, the applicant behind this proposal for Unit 9 Latimer Road. This application will already be familiar to members. It returns to committee with a clear recommendation for approval from officers and with the benefit of the inspector's findings from the previous appeal. The previous refusal related solely to the perceived impact of the balconies on neighbouring properties. The inspector disagreed with that reason for refusal and concluded that any potential impact was acceptable and well within policy requirements, with the scheme being fully compliant. Officers have also reached the same conclusion. Nonetheless, we have listened to the concerns previously raised by members and have made a reduction in the balcony areas as part of this revised proposal. The scheme before you today, therefore, remains substantially the same proposal that officers and the inspector considered acceptable, while also responding constructively to the committee's previous concerns. This is an opportunity to bring forward a high-quality, sustainable development designed by award-winning architects on a site long identified for redevelopment by the council, delivering both new workspace and much-needed housing on Latimer Road. We believe this proposal represents a hugely positive investment in the street and the wider area, and we respectfully ask the committee to support the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. So, colleagues, our chance to ask either side questions. Waller, would you like to go first?
Thank you, Chair. My first question is to the objectors. What is, I can see you have the daylight and light pollution and not having enough light. But if I ask you to object in 1, 2, 3 objections, what are the main concerns in just 3 points?
Good evening. The main objections would be height, mass, and loss. Sorry. And loss of light, sunlight. Some of the rooms over 36% to neighbouring homes, and that's at a guesstimate.
And what?
Loss of light.
Loss of light. Okay.
Yes.
Same question to the applicant. What is the one compromise you can do to alleviate, or a couple of compromises you can do to alleviate these issues or address them?
Councillor, my name is Luke Emerton from DP9. The agent and planning consultant. The scheme is before you tonight for a decision. We've amended the scheme to reflect the comments from this committee last year and the reason for refusal. But it's really important, as was explained by the officers, the planning inspector, an independent body outside of RBKC, determined that everything was acceptable on this scheme. If I take those 3 points, height and mass, acceptable, policy compliant, daylight, sunlight, policy compliant, BRE compliant. Everything else, all of the other matters to do with noise, overlooking, impacts on neighbours, everything was compliant, everything addressed neighbourhood plan,
local plan, and the inspector determined it was an acceptable scheme. So that's the scheme that's before you now.
Could you remind me what was the main objection for the inspector?
The inspectorate. The reason why the appeal was dismissed was that the legal agreement wasn't signed and completed in time for the appeal. So it was effectively a technicality in that the legal agreement supporting the application was not signed. The rest of it, all of the other planning matters, design matters, amenity matters were considered acceptable.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. Well, in that case, thank you very much indeed for speaking. So our turn to ask officers questions. Who'd like to go first? Lloyd, Councillor North first.
Thank you. I'm familiar with this case from its previous incarnations, and you cannot ignore the community's views on this. And our predecessors in this area have voiced those concerns despite the inspector and despite the what we've heard from the applicants here. Officers, can you give us some guidance here of what leeway we have here? Because clearly our committee are not happy with this scheme. However, how hemmed in are we by the inspector report here, to be frank?
Yep, I have the previous committee report open as we're speaking. There's a full assessment in the previous committee report of the daylight sunlight assessment and overlooking and noise and amenity impacts. And then in paragraph 5.5 of the committee report for this item, the reason for refusal from the last planning committee was basically on the number and size of balconies on the front elevation, overlooking and noise, loss of visual privacy and disturbance to neighbouring property. So that's the previous decision that the committee took, and the inspector then assessed on the basis of the committee report the objections that were received, and they found that there was no amenity impact. So unless the scheme's substantially different or the context has substantially changed. I note that some of the objectors have highlighted that the context has changed in terms of a local pub has opened, and some schemes that have permission have not been implemented. But their hands are pretty tied by the previous committee report and the inspector's decision in terms of these issues were fully assessed and something would have had to have changed to now introduce daylight as an issue.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Can I just ask a question? So the inspector, I read the inspector's report, and it did seem really quite firm, the inspector's judgment that these matters relating to, I guess as a broad category, impact on neighbours were acceptable. That's a correct reading of the inspector judgment. Is it a summary of obviously a number of pages of report?
Yes, yeah, I have the appeal decision open as well, and it goes through sense of enclosure, daylight and sunlight. The inspector acknowledges at paragraph 18 that the building would be much taller than the existing building. It states it is accompanied by a daylight sunlight assessment which confirms the proposed development complies with relevant BRE guidance. There would be a degree of daylight and sunlight reduction to certain windows, but the assessment concludes that any loss would be limited and not significant. And he or she concludes the proposals are considered to have an acceptable impact in terms of daylight and sunlight.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No. Okay, thank you. Well, in that case, I think we need to make a decision. I just want to make absolutely certain I've got this right. So what we are doing here this evening is that we are offering, as members, we are offering officers a view as to what we might have decided had all of this information been in front of us, okay, But it's obviously the planning inspector will actually make the decision. It's out of our hands now. But what's happened is that the planning inspector, in their decision, their decision about the previous appeal, has obviously given it a very strong steer, which must be a material consideration, that the reasons that the previous committee gave for refusal, essentially they disagreed with. And we are in effect invited to set aside. Is that correct? And in terms of the actual motion that we need to put in front of us, so yes, paragraph 3. So we are seeking the committee's views. So yeah, okay. So and then that the way this would work is that the committee's views feed into the council's formal response to the planning inspectorate, which I think actually has to be made within a matter of just the next couple of days, I think, from memory, somebody said to me. Is that correct? That's correct. Okay. Right, colleagues, what do we make of this? Lloyd.
Well, there's a sorry, you used the phrase the views. The views and our decision may well be different, because we may have views, but we feel a little bit hamstrung here. Have I got that correct?
Yes, I think in colloquial terms that might well be quite a good way of putting it. Other opinions, Weller or Sam? Okay, all right. I mean, for my part, this is a strange circumstance because, frankly, particularly in view of the cyber attack, it's actually unusual in normal circumstances for applicants to appeal non-determination against our lack of decision-making, frankly. But the fact is they're entitled to do so, and they have done, and so we need to make so. I think what I suspect Councillor North and Councillor Idris probably feel this perhaps quite strongly. Sympathy for the general objectives. People have been used to Latimer Road having a certain style for years and years and years of relatively low-rise buildings whose impact on the street might well have been rather small, actually. And now you've got these buildings which clearly, with professional architects, professional advisors, come up pushing to the limit of policy. So I think, colleagues, I think reluctantly we would probably need to say that were we actually making a decision this evening, that we would say that we would grant permission. I don't know whether there's any point in us suggesting attached conditions or at this stage it's not really our business anymore. Is that fair?
No, I think that would all come out in the appeal.
Yes, okay, all right. Well, in that case, what I'd like to do, yes, Lloyd.
Sorry, is there any way we can add a comment in that we would like to see very robust resident engagement on this going forward? Is that possible? That we can put that in as a note?
I think we could possibly suggest it, but it's down to an inspector, and inspectors tend to be rather quite strict about these things. They say, well, you don't have to have resident engagement, and there's nothing to see here or worry about here, frankly. So no, I don't think it's necessary. So the recommendation here is paragraph 3. So I would suggest that were we the decision maker, we would agree to grant planning permission given all of the circumstances in front of us this evening. Can I see those in agreement with that proposition, please? So that is agreed. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for coming, everyone. On that note, can we move on to the application Egerton Court, which is in Old Brompton Road, please?
Thank you, Chairman. This application seeks advertisement consent for the installation of a shroud with temporary advertisement. The application has been applied for on a 12-month period. The proposed elevation can be seen on this slide with the advertisement or commercial area is identified in the hashed red markings on this central portion of the building here. There have been no objections to this application, and the officer recommendation is to grant advertisement consent subject to the recommended conditions, including condition 6, which requires it to be temporary in nature for 12 months only. That concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions about this? Well, in that case, I think we can probably move to a vote. Can I see those in favour of the recommendation, please? So that is agreed. If we can now move to the application in Clarville Street. Who is going to introduce that?
That's myself, Chairman. Thank you.
That's back to you. Well, continuing with you. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Okay, so please go ahead.
Thank you. Before I begin, I would like to draw members' attention to the addendum report, including some amendments to condition 5, which relates to the restriction of the terrace. The application relates to number 49 Clarville Street, identified by the red arrow on this slide. To the east are the residential properties along Clarville Grove, and I'll identify those with my cursor here. The application before members this evening seeks planning permission for a roof terrace on the roof of the building. The distance to the nearby properties can be seen on this slide. Members may have noted from the officer report that a scheme in 2012 was refused by the local planning authority and dismissed at appeal. This has been referenced in detail in section 4 of the officer report. The roof terrace as part of this application has been set in from the eastern elevation by 1.2 metres. Oh, sorry. Keep going. I will get it back. There we go. There we go. So sorry, the proposed roof terrace has been set in 1.2 metres from the eastern elevation, creating more of a distance between the application property and the properties to the east. Recommended condition 5 ensures that only the decking area is used as the amenity space. And again, with my cursor, this is the decking area here, enclosed by the metal railing. The proposed elevation, or one of the proposed elevations, can be seen on this slide. Recommended condition 4 ensures that the metal railings are metal and painted black. Lastly, as identified in the officer report and as mentioned earlier, there was a previous scheme refused by the local planning authority in 2012, and this was dismissed at appeal. This can be seen on this slide before members with the elevation and the footprint or the floor area of the proposed terrace. To conclude, officers are satisfied that the previous reasons for refusal and inspector's decision have been overcome. The officer's recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to the recommended conditions as set out within the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we have got speakers for this case. And I think first, I do recognise Councillor Hammond as being present. Greg, do you want to speak first? You've got up to 2 minutes if you wish.
I think, Chair, it might be better if I introduce Mr. Small and Wyke, the planning consultant, first, and then I'll follow up, if that's okay.
Yes. So between you, you've got between you 5 minutes. So please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members and Chair of the Planning Committee. My name is Wyke Chung, and I'm a planning consultant and chartered town planner. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the residents of 8 neighbouring properties along Clairville Street and Claregrove Grove to strongly object to this application. This proposal directly conflicts with policy CD9, which protects residential amenity and dictates an 18-metre separation distance to prevent unacceptable overlooking. Whilst we recognise that this 18-metre rule is typically between opposite habitable rooms, nevertheless, we consider such rule of thumb should be applied when assessing roof terraces, especially as separation distances to rear windows of Clairville Grove can be as close as 11.7 metres. Supporting para 6.8.2 of the policy recognises that terraces on roofs of the main buildings or extensions can be visually intrusive and result in serious intrusion into the privacy and quiet enjoyment of neighbouring residential properties. And it provides no specific minimum setback distances, and thus should be assessed on a site-by-site basis, and we argue that significant loss of privacy will occur should this be approved. We consider that an elevated roof terrace creates an entirely different type of overlooking than a window. It provides a 360-degree panoramic view straight down into private gardens and habitable room windows without the framing restriction of a windowsill or wall. The officer points out the need for low-lying vegetation conditioned to be no higher than 1.1 metre, that is, to mainly screen the balustrade of the terrace. We believe such thinking is fundamentally flawed to apply such mitigation to screen the balustrade only when it should be used to screen and address loss of privacy concerns. But at such short planting height, fails in that regard. It's simply an inappropriate site for a roof terrace. The site sits within the Queensgate Conservation Area. A prominent roof terrace with balustrades and planting is entirely out of character here, failing to preserve or enhance the character of the area and will inevitably attract precedents for similar proposals sprouting up, thus further eroding the special character of the conservation area. On behalf of the community, we ask the committee to uphold its policies and refuse this application.
My name is Lawrence Small, and I live at 39 Clairville Grove, directly across from this applicant's Airbnb property. The last time that I spoke before this committee was in 2012 to oppose a roof terrace application by this applicant. The same planning policy exists now as existed then, and the application should be denied for the same reasons as it was 14 years ago. It will be fundamentally harmful to the Queensgate Conservation Area. The application clearly fails the planning officer's own stated decisive test of, quote, whether the proposed roof terrace would safeguard the living conditions of neighboring occupiers. No amount of fanciful drawings by Savills of some potted plants will alter the fundamental fact of direct overlooking from less than 12 meters away into my bedroom, my son's bedroom, my living room, my kitchen, and my garden, with the attendant noise and light disturbance. Nor can the application be saved by the imposition of a few restrictions, which will be ignored in practice in any case. The same adverse impact of overlooking and noise and light pollution applies to my neighbors, as is witnessed by the 12 objection letters. In addition, there will be the negative detriment created by a wholly out-of-character roof terrace in a part of the conservation area where there are none. Given there are 16 identical terraced flat roofs in a U-shape around this property, it is clear that this precedent application cannot be supported. It will create overlooking and therefore loss of amenity. It will be a visible eyesore, and it will severely damage the character of the conservation area. If the committee approves this application in any form whatsoever, it should be aware that it is making a conscious decision to impose a significant adverse harm to the quality of life for my family and for that of approximately 12 other of its constituent families in the conservation area for an application which clearly contravenes the Council's own planning policies. Therefore, I would respectfully urge you to completely reject this application. Many thanks for your time today.
Chair, thanks very much. No, I haven't come here today to argue against building upwards as a matter of principle. For example, draw your attentions to the Redcliffe Road mansards that we've agreed as a council and we all think is a good idea. But the proposal before you today, which we must focus on, is absolutely nothing like that. What you've got is a singular development of a deck on the roof of just one of the 4 houses in the terrace in what is, for South Kensington, a relatively low-rise conservation area. And as such, the proposal will spoil the evenness of the line of the existing terrace, and therefore it will cause an unambiguous harm to the conservation area. And it will cause that harm for no material benefit. It is not as if this proposal would provide living space in the form of extra new bedrooms. Instead, it will just be an intrusive party space for gatherings of people in a position that is far too close to neighbours' houses. If officers had accepted the invitations to view the proposed space from neighbours' houses, as I have and as Janet has, they would have seen this for themselves, and they would have taken this point, I'm sure, into account in their report to you. As it is, the planning balance before you tonight is to weigh up the harm to the conservation area, which is real, against the benefit, which is minimal. And therefore, on behalf of my 3 Courtfield Ward colleagues, I ask you to refuse planning permission tonight.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Now, is the applicant, Mr. Haynes, sorry, you're present, sir. Okay, so you've got a similar time, just over 5 minutes. When you're ready, please go.
Thank you, Chair. My name's Joe Haynes. I'm a planning consultant at Savills, here on behalf of the applicant. He'd like to be here with us this evening, but it's his son's birthday party. The roof terrace is 17.5 metres from the houses opposite on Clareville Street and 12 metres from the houses to the side on Clareville Grove. The terrace is set back from the edge of the roof to render it invisible from the street and the conservation area, and to reduce the opportunity for overlooking of neighbours. There are many examples within the borough of roof terraces in close proximity to neighbouring properties. By way of a handful of examples, local to the application site are terraces between Hereford Square and Bretsham Place at approximately 10 metres, and at Rowland Way at approximately 8 metres. Further afield is a roof terrace allowed at Appeal at 12 Norland Place in Holland Park, approximately 8 metres from the nearest habitable windows. Local Plan Policy CD9 requires that new development ensures, and I quote, reasonable visual privacy. The accompanying text to that policy at paragraph 6.81 says, when considering privacy, a distance of about 18 metres between opposite habitable windows reduces intervisibility to a degree acceptable to most people. But there are many instances in the historic fabric of the borough of distances less than this. Paragraph 6.83 goes on to set out that assessing the impact of development on neighbouring amenity is, and I quote again, dependent on on-site judgment. Officers first visited the site on the 16th of September 2025 as part of a pre-application advice inquiry, and again on the 1st of April 2026 in consideration of this application. Your officers are the only independent expert judges of the proposal that's before you today, and respectfully, I suggest that their judgment should hold great weight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Colleagues, so we can ask questions. Lloyd, you go first.
Thank you. My question is to the applicant. You've heard some compelling arguments, and there are some photographs we've seen here which show the overlooking, and the mitigation you're proposing doesn't quite meet those concerns of the residents. So what would you say that you could change this to meet those requirements. And I would ask you, are there any other, in that terrace of houses, are there any other properties that have done the same thing that you're proposing?
I'll answer your second question first. There are no other roof terraces on the terrace of houses that this property forms a part of. It's possible that well, the pre-application scheme set the balustrade of the terrace at the edge of the roof, and officers advised that we should bring it back in. The size of the actual roof terrace hasn't changed from pre-application to application stage. I do wonder whether the planting at a very low level, if that were especially on the side elevation, which is closest to the nearest neighbouring properties, if that were allowed to grow up higher or a different type of planting, let's say, then that would potentially provide greater screening.
And if I could ask to the objectors, would that be a compromise that would be acceptable if the planting was raised higher, or would it not?
No. So if they forget to water it and the plants die, then they provide no cover whatsoever. If no, of course not. It's not going to provide any kind of protection. We're going to be overlooked. Everyone is going to be overlooked.
Sorry, if I may also add, this is the precise contradiction that I've flagged in my speech, where, you plant very high planting to screen, against loss of privacy with my clients, but then that will be detrimental to the character and appearance of the conservation area because, effectively you're having like a woodland. I mean, that's a bit sort of hyperbole, but that's the precise point, is you can't really plant a decent height. That's why the condition that the officer is suggesting at planting height at maximum 1.1 metre is so that you don't get an overgrown bit of, that will become a lot more obtrusive on the street scene where if plants are allowed to grow so high. So it's almost like damned if you do and damned if you don't, really. So again, it goes back to my point that this is an inappropriate location for this roof terrace, given the constraints that we have, heritage and privacy-wise.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay. Sam, anything? No. Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed, everyone. Thank you. So, colleagues, we can now ask officers questions. I'd like to go first. I think that with this case, it does seem as though in this particular little part of the conservation area, there aren't actually many terraces. And also, I'm wondering the inspector, our refusal and the inspector decision to support our refusal. 2012 is a little while ago. First simple question. Our policies 2012 are essentially the same. Is that right? It would have been the old UDP days. I'm old enough to remember the UDP. But is it policies that have been carried over and carried over and carried over sort of thing? That's the first question. The second is that with this particular, and I think this may I think is important, that are we satisfied that from public views, this terrace with its setback as now proposed, it wouldn't really be very visible from public views? I agree, if you were on the second floor of a building nearby, I'm sure you'd see it. But can you help with those things?
Of course, thank you, Chairman. So in relation to the policies, you're correct, the development plan has changed, I think potentially changed twice since 2012, where we had the local planning 2019 and then our current local plan in 2024. The policies, they do remain similar, so there would have been policies that related to living conditions and relationships with nearby properties, and there also would have been policies relating to impact on conservation areas, character and appearance. So there are similar policies that have formed part of the development plan and form part of your consideration of this application. Officers consider that the changes, so the setback nature of the roof terrace, the further separation distances to the properties to the east, have overcome the concerns raised previously in relation to living conditions. Officers are also satisfied that the introduction of the metal railings due to the changes would also now overcome some of the concerns previously raised from the local planning authority and the inspector in relation to the conservation area and the roofscape of those properties. There will be private viewpoints or private views of the roof terrace from neighbouring properties within the conservation area. However, due to the setback nature, it will also be screened from wider or longer townscape views at street level.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Waller.
Thank you, Chair. I have one question to officers. Has any officer visited the site?
So an officer has visited the site as part of the pre-application discussions, and they also further visited the site as part of this formal application. I'd also draw members' attention to paragraph 6.8, where the officer makes observations from their site visit, where they were able to see some roof terraces along Stanhope Gardens as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just looking on